The Lord gave to us the Buenos Aires Ranch. It was a beautiful location for a Bible school. It had an airstrip, and the rancher had just finished building this large ranch house enclosed in a pillared porch. Mission Aviation Fellowship pilots and airplanes provided us with supplies and with prompt and safe travel. Their first airplane was yellow, but because there were lots of trees in the jungle that had yellow blossoms, their new plane was red and white. Our first building project was done by volunteer labor from the Tzeltal congregations. They built this chapel and kitchen. Deacon Manuel Santis Kituk of Corralito is laying the last tiles for the roof of the kitchen. Meanwhile, men were mixing mud, including ex-witch doctor Nicolas Nietzsche from Corralito, dressed in his white tribal garb. They mixed pine needles into the mud to hold it together. Then they picked up gobs of it and filled in the walls with it. This was the beginning of the Tzeltal Bible Center. A gathering of the church leaders was held so that they could see the location. They came from both highland and lowland churches. A council was chosen for the school. The first 3 students were Manuel Lopez Cana, Juan Lopez Mucha, and Manuel Cruz Aguilar. Francisco Gomez Nimail became the first Tzeltal minister. He came to help Paul Meyerink with the revision of the New Testament. Manuel Cruz was later ordained as the first lowland Tzeltal minister. Francisco Gomez's pastoral work became a full-time responsibility, and Miguel Mendez took his place as translation helper. He also served as director of the Bible school. We built this grass-roofed shed as a shelter for our bricks to dry. It was located across the creek where we found a supply of dirt that was a good combination of clay and sand. There was also an abundant supply of stone from the hillside. It was all limestone, some of which we burned in this oven to make lime. It took 3 days and 2 nights of constant burning and lots of firewood. Martin Gomez Perez came to help with the construction. They were delighted with the birth of their son Samuel. We made bricks with this simple press. Martin is filling it with moist dirt. He then squeezes it into a brick. After a week of drying, it is ready to use. Our neighbor, Victor Beltran, was very helpful in providing the lumber that we needed. He was the leader of a crew of Indians who shaped the logs with their axes. Some of the Tzeltals were very professional with their axes. The logs were raised up and cut up into lumber with a 2-man rip saw. Martin Gomez is on top of the log. We chose a spot for our home and dug a trench for the foundation. First of all, we built a storage building, which we filled with the dirt bricks. We hauled stone for the foundation, sand from the river, and lime from the oven for mortar. Water was carried from a nearby spring. Putting up the rafters was a learning experience. We added a water tank for the kitchen sink and troughs to catch the rainwater. Helen is thankful for a home after 6 years in Chiapas. The cup of gold bush provided an abundance of flowers. A chimney and fireplace were added later. We lived happily in this home for 22 years. It was an exciting day when a 2-motored cargo plane brought us our refrigerator and our barrels of household goods that had been stored in the Kemper's garage in Tuxtla. Pilot Ortega made a quick and easy landing. But its wide wings showed that we should have made the airstrip wider when we planted those fence posts. There was barely enough room for him to turn around. Unloaded, he is ready for takeoff. And fortunately, he didn't damage his wingtips on the fence posts. The Jeep was invaluable. Here it drags a load of rafter poles for the student housing. Since there were no longer cattle on the ranch, there was an abundance of grass for the roofs. Bundles were thrown up and tied down with wire. Slats for the kitchen walls were split from young pine trees and then trimmed with a machete. A great amount of lumber was needed. We built student housing for over a dozen families, a tile-roofed kitchen and a grass-roofed sleeping house for each family. 10 years later, we replaced the houses with more permanent and adequate housing. This time, we used cement posts instead of wooden ones. We received some help from students from the Reformed Bible College. At the top is Steve Long, who lived for some months at Buenos Aires. He called himself a Christian hobo, drifting from place to place offering his help. The new student houses had a larger kitchen, galvanized tin roofing for the living quarters, and cement floors. We chose a spot across the meadow as a location for a chapel and classroom building. It was surrounded by some tall pine trees. These trees would supply us with the lumber we needed. We also had some beams sawed from tall pine trees in the canyon, where the owner wanted to clear some land for a cornfield. Carrying them out was a real challenge. Here they are arriving at the spot where the Jeep could take over and drag them the rest of the way. Martine planed and shaped the timbers for the chapel building. Don Santana, a bricklayer from San Cristobal, put up the walls of the chapel and classrooms. From the pillared house, this was the view of the chapel and classroom building, also a home for the school director and some of the student houses. During dry season, our water came from the river. Here Martine is filling 3 barrels in the wagon. The Hennevelds joined us at the Buenos Aires ranch. They had 3 children, Kevin, Brenda, and Mark. They lived in the pillared house when the Meyerinks moved into their new home. So we were 3 couples sharing the workload. Here we gather in the home of the Meyerinks. Our students came from all over the tribe. Alonso Luna became the first minister of the Tenihapa area. Juan Lopez was from a Bachajon congregation, and Miguel was from a jungle village. Francisco Mendez was a student and then was ordained as a pastor for Abasolo and its congregations, including the Buenos Aires congregation. Pastor Martin Hernandez of San Quintin served a year as director of the Bible school. His whistle is calling the students to the morning chapel service. Student Santiago Moreno is in charge of the service today. I'm teaching a class in church history which requires a map of the world. Pablo Feliciano became a teacher at the Bible school. Among other subjects, Helen taught typing. And she taught Bible studies with flannel graph for the students' wives and children. The students' children and Lisa are all completing a coloring assignment. There were classes in embroidery for the students' wives. Dorothy Meyerink is teaching sewing. Using the treadle sewing machine was also taught. Sewing with the machine saved the women a lot of time. Helen taught them how to make dolls for their children. And this boy made 2 of them and is carrying an alive one. They also made colorful baby clothes under the direction of my sister Pearl. At the end of the school term, they displayed all the work that they had done.